Okay, so now let's talk about containers. So there's two types of container that I want to talk about. The first is about establishing a no. Containers are about the edges of the container, right? You don't have a container unless you have edges or boundaries or something like a wall, right? That's what a container is. Otherwise, it's just space, isn't it? So containers are defined by their boundary, by their edge, essentially by what they won't do. So a container, this bowl is a container, right? It won't allow certain things out. It's defined by what it doesn't do. It doesn't allow liquids to leave if the liquids are lower than this line, right? And it has walls. That's what makes it a container. Otherwise, it's not a container at all. So for you, establishing a container means establishing the no. If you can be the first one to say no in a social scenario, in a scenario of influence, if you can be the one who says no first, like you establish the no, that kind of means that you're in charge, right? And now another person may try to grab control of the conversation by having a bigger, better, stronger no. And you have to be able to respond with your no that's even better, right? We need to have the biggest, best, most profound no in the conversation to really own it, to have control over it. Okay. Now, this came up with me recently with a former client, and basically, she just kept trying to like take control, and I had just had because I had a bigger no, I was willing to walk away. It put the situation into my favor. So I was able to maintain influence in the conversation because I'll just be honest, like she was a very difficult client, very, very difficult, and trying to like make my life difficult and just trying, sabotaging her own results, like basically anything to get in the way of progress and success. So I had to use my influence to get us onto the right track. And we had to spend hours on the wrong track really before I was able to turn it into the right way. And that's okay. She's just incredibly difficult and like doesn't even realize how much she's getting into her own way. But the way I was able to establish influence is just by saying no, to the things that I wouldn't do, saying no, like establishing the no. These are the things that won't work. And basically, I'm willing to walk away right now. I'm willing to walk away. And because I meant it and I was willing to just be the one with the bigger no, I was able to get her enrolled back into my vision. Then we made very fast progress and got a lot done in a short period of time once I was able to take control. So, this works in sales conversations too. The opposite of this is being desperate, right? Being desperate for a sale, or being the desperate coach who like, it's really horrible to think about, but being desperate for a sale means that you don't have a no. You have no. There's nobody who you wouldn't work with, and you're just chasing people in order to work with them. And that actually is the same thing that happens if you're like a coach or healer with no boundaries. And let's just say that whatever the client wants, like if you let the client direct the conversation, you might just get dragged along. And that's the same thing as being desperate for a sale and just chasing people. It's the same thing. We need to have the boundaries that can establish the no, where we can say no and where we can have a bigger, better, stronger no, and almost like a preemptive no. You need to be the first and the best to say no in a scenario, to have social control, to have influence over the situation. Okay, this is very important to establish that container. So if you watch masters of influence, people who are just like fundamentally just like masters and on point, and they just have high levels of influence, they're able to establish the no faster, sooner, more powerfully than whoever they're talking to, which makes you need to play by their rules, by their game. When someone establishes a no, a container, it makes you, if you want to engage with them, you have to do it according to their rules, according to their context, isn't it, right? So you're already bringing somebody into your vision, to your rules, onto your playing field, just by establishing a no and allowing them to make a choice. If they're going to play, they got to play by your rules. And so now you have mastery and control over the situation, if that makes sense. And literally the way to do this, you need to be more fearless and strong and more wise and tactful and faster with your no's. And you have to mean it. Don't bluff it, right? Make sure that you mean it. And And yeah, be willing to walk away from something that isn't beneficial. Be willing to end the conversation now if the person isn't willing to play by your rules, right? Does that make sense? So like, yes, you have empathy. You need to maybe go along with it, as I did with the client for a little while, but you're going to always bring them back into your scenario, your rules, so that you can actually help them to accomplish their goals. And that's by bringing them into your vision, right? That's the way of doing it. So this is very useful in social influence. You can try this on a date, where you'll notice on dates, if you're in the world of dating still, which some of us might do that sometimes. Uh, I don't really do much dating now, but I've done it previously. And essentially, if you can be faster if you can be faster with your no, and just like really mean it, like these are kind of people who I won't date. These are the scenarios I won't do. I don't do this. I don't do that. Like this, oh, and I went on this date with this person and I just knew it wasn't right. So I let her go so fast because of this. Those things make somebody listen differently, right? They really respect you, and they realize if they want to be with you, they have to play by your rules, and they're going to come into your world a little bit, right? Just by telling those stories. So you want to be able to talk about the times that you said no, the people that you said no, and you need to actually be doing this, right? Like essentially this means raise your standards. Raise your standards, live by higher standards, live by the standards that you really want. Your standards as well create your life. Your standards are like contextual behavioral rules that you use to create your life, isn't it? This is all the same game. We're just using different words for it. Raising your standards means to have better boundaries and better context, a higher level of context for your life, because your standards give context to your life. They establish the boundaries, they establish the container, they say no, and they allow you to create a better life because you're playing in a different game with different rules. Okay. So if you actually start doing this, then you'll start to have stories of times where you've said no to people, and you'll energetically be able to like really have power behind it when you say, I don't do these kinds of things. And yeah, the first couple of times you do that, you might lose somebody. They may walk away, or they may just think that maybe you're bluffing and try to call your bluff, and they may decide not to work with you or not to date you or something. But once you get some practice at this, and then you go to say it, like people will know that you're being truthful. They'll believe you. There'll be energetic power behind it. You know, in a sense, you don't really have the boundary unless you establish it and somebody says no and they walk away. Like, because that's your test. If you set a boundary, like I'm not going to work with this kind of person anymore, and then this kind of person comes up, and then you say no to them, and they decide not to play by your rules, and they actually walk away, now you've passed your test. But if you chase them, you failed the test. So until it happens once, it's like it didn't even happen. It's like you didn't even have the boundary, because the universe doesn't know. Your mind doesn't know if you're actually going to follow through, right? So by letting people walk away, and by losing the sale or losing the date or whatever, this is the only way to establish the actual container. And then from then on, you'll have it. And when you communicate it, people will get it, and they'll sense that you're being truthful, and they'll actually know that if they want to work with you, they must step inside your container, your boundary. Okay, so that's what I want to say about that one. That's the most important part. The second part here is about container in business. I just wrote one sentence here. In business as well, you need a container to place your leads, like an email list or something. So pretty basic advice, but in business, you need a container. So it could be a Facebook group, it could be an email list, it could be a telephone number list. Like you need a place to put, like while you're building a relationship with potential clients, for example, you need a container to place them so that you can talk to them and continue to keep that relationship going. If it's an email list, then you can send out one email, but everybody gets it. Or if it's a Facebook group, you do one video or one post and lots of people see it. If it's a text message list, whatever, you can send it out and they all get it. Or if it's a list of phone numbers, right, you can call them, and just, it's an organized way to keep the relationship going. That's going to be required. So establishing a container in business in the marketing terms, and this doesn't just apply to when you're trying to get clients. It also could be ideal collaborators, right? You want to have a container for ideal collaborators so that you can build a relationship with them over time. It's just part of business. Okay, so just wanted to throw that in there. If you're in business and you don't have an email list or like a Facebook group yet or something like that, or a list of phone numbers, just get one as soon as possible, because every new client opportunity, you want to put them into this container, and you ideally you want them to say yes to the container, like the email list or the group, right? And then you want to be able to build value over time and build trust over time inside that container. So that's another usage of the word container. But the mostly what I want to say was this first one. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I hope that makes sense to you. So far we've covered the word context and container, which are very similar things. That's why I put them together. They're almost the same thing. They're just a different way of talking about it, right? When you establish context, the container is sort of energetically there, but you just need to start to establish it by saying no. That establishes the boundaries. Establish those no's early on, faster, bigger, better. Be willing to walk away from anything. Be willing to say, like, if we don't play by my rules, we're not going to play. But then obviously you need to be influential and meet somebody where they're at. We're going to get into all that stuff, how to meet somebody where they're at and bring them in to your vision, your container. Like, that's part of what we're going to cover next. But just to let you know, this is important that you establish it in the beginning, because then you'll have something to bring somebody else into. All right, so I hope that makes sense, and continue to exercise your power of no. We're going to go into that in the next couple of videos. Okay.